Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here, despite it being Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day, for another holiday-themed movie that I saw recently, about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, something like that. A film that came out in 2023 that I really wanted to see, a slasher, a new slasher, one of my favorite subgenres of horror, one of my favorite movie types that I grew up with and stuff, despite I probably should not have. Thanks, Mom. It's one of those things that I wanted to see so badly, and everybody, including a friend of mine, Horror FFA, who I highly recommend here on YouTube, told me about. Everybody was talking about this film when it was coming out, when it finally came out. It's called Thanksgiving, directed and co-written by Eli Roth, the guy who brought us Cabin Fever, The Green Inferno. He was in Inglourious Basterds. He's a great guy. I just love his work. I love his movies most of the time. He's one of those underrated directors like Adam Green is it Adam Green? Pretty sure it's Adam Green that did Frozen and the Morrow thing, whatever it was called. Anyway, big fan of both of those guys. I think they're super underrated as directors nowadays. It's also co-written by the guy who also did Grindhouse trailers, I assume, with Eli Roth for the original Thanksgiving short trailer thing that was in that. I'll get to that in a moment. He co-wrote or wrote Cabin Fever with Eli Roth. This guy's an Eli Roth co-worker who's been around for a while. So they got together, they made a movie called Thanksgiving. And again, it's based on a trailer that was part of the Grindhouse film from Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. If you haven't seen that, which, by the way, I have not seen Planet Terror, I need to. They had fake movie trailers between those two movies back in the day when Grindhouse came out. One of them being Machete, which went on to be adapted into two movies with Danny Trejo, Machete and Machete Kills. Have not seen those, not sure if I'll review them for this channel. I don't even know what they are, really, to be honest with you. Never even seen them. But another one of the fake trailers that were out there was Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, which was a slasher set around Thanksgiving, a guy dressed up in a John Carver mask and a pilgrim costume killing people in very Thanksgiving-themed ways, which sounded badass and sounded so much fun. And people, apparently, for years have begged Eli Roth to make that into a full feature. And he kind of was trying, and I think there was some financial issues trying to get this thing produced. But here we are. It finally came out last year in 2023. Let me tell you, it might be my favorite horror film that came out last year. We had some good ones. We had mostly a lot of duds and forgettable movies like Five Nights at Freddy's, which is another review I'll do for this channel very soon. Stick around. You'll get that review. But this movie was not what I thought it was going to be. I actually thought it would be kind of solid. I heard a lot of good things about it going into it. I heard it was really bloody, and it is, which I miss in slashers. I miss movies having that kind of attempt at making something really fun with slashers. And slashers are fun when they're super violent, when they're super sleazy. This is not a sleazy film, but it's borderline parody, borderline serious on what it wants to do, and I love that about it. Anyway, it sounded awesome. So let me get to the actual story about Thanksgiving. What is this movie about? Well, we have a group of friends. We follow a daughter in that group who happens to be the daughter of a particular store owner who happens to be a douchebag that has people working at his retail store on Thanksgiving night, which I had to do that when I worked in retail. It's bullshit. I hate it. This movie would have been way more relevant if it had been around 5 years ago when Black Friday really overtook Thanksgiving. You had people that you'd be spending time with at your family's house that would try to rush you out of the house so they could go shopping that night, which was crazy as hell. This movie really talks about that a lot in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie. And essentially, you have a bunch of people that get killed that night at that store due to rioting, crazy consumerism types of shit. And again, that's really where the parody line comes from. Nobody gets punished, no one gets arrested despite there being cameras and stuff in the store, whatever. It was crazy. It was crazy the way people were getting killed and whatever. Now, our main chick here, the one that's the daughter of the store owner, she also has a new stepmom, and she's kind of got a weird, rocky relationship with this woman. This woman might only like her dad for money. Her dad's kind of a weirdo. Her mom passed away in the past, which was, kind of a shame. It made you feel for this young lady. I think that she and all of the people that played her friends in the friend group, including the guy who played her boyfriend, who now has left the friend group after that rioting situation where he also broke his hand in a horrible way, basically had to lose his career scholarship for baseball and everything too. Everybody that played these teenagers were great. they didn't even have that much to work with in the script. There's not a whole lot of character stuff in that script for any of these side characters, but all of them were good. You actually liked all of them due to these performances, which was pretty nice. They actually seem like a group of people that, number one, would hang out, and number two, don't seem like your typical teenage douchebags that you can't stand, that you want to die. They aren't the typical cannon fodder that you get with slashers, which again, with a script that doesn't have much for them to do, I was impressed, if I'm being honest with you. It just shows how much Eli Roth can do behind the camera and how much he can get his actors to do in front of the camera with how great he is for his casting choices, for his decision making, all of that. I liked all of them. I think everybody in the movie gave a really good performance. To me, this is one of the best slashers to come out in forever. It knows what slasherism is, it knows how to make that fun, it knows how to make it wild and zany and crazy, and that little element of parody stuff is really fun for this movie. I really love it because of that. And yes, I did use the L word on Valentine's Day. I loved Thanksgiving. I think it's fantastic. It's one of those movies I'm going to watch every year for this holiday, just like I do My Bloody Valentine nowadays for Valentine's Day, which I did the other day, matter of fact. Thanksgiving was a blast. All of my friends talked about it. Everybody who went to see it was talking about it. The whole horror community were talking about how great this was. And I was sitting around all year talking about how amazing Infinity Pool was. It was my favorite horror film of the year. Then this comes along, it totally kicks the knees out from Infinity Pool for me. Took it over completely. So now we skip to a year after, basically, the events of that Black Friday, really Thanksgiving night catastrophe. And everybody's kind of dealing with what they dealt with. Like I said, the main chick and her boyfriend broke up over his broken hand and how he just kind of abandoned everybody. And he kind of comes back in the picture. They kind of have a struggle in their little relationship. She's not dating anybody new from what I remember. And her friend group are just kind of dealing with what happened a year previously. And it's held pretty realistically, you know? However, this year, someone is dressing up with a John Carver mask because this town that they live in, very much like the town from My Bloody Valentine, it's a small town, and it really loves like supermarkets, grocery stores, little electronic shops here and there, mom and pop shops, that kind of thing. They celebrate Thanksgiving quite a bit and have parades and stuff in this small town. Just like in My Bloody Valentine, they had a bunch of Valentine's Day celebrations in their small town. And I really love that. It felt like a love letter to kind of My Bloody Valentine, but out of the way. You know, it added some personality and some setting to this actual movie with this small town. But the town has these masks they wear of John Carver, the old pilgrim. Now we have a killer who shows up this year after that event who begins to hunt down people who were involved as terrible shoppers and whatever, who were killing people by accident, whether they cared or not, is what I meant to say, at that store the previous year on Black Friday / Thanksgiving. And this killer is brutal. He wears that mask, the John Carver mask. He wears the whole pilgrim getup. He is wild and dangerous. He is so dangerous, dude. And again, practical effects. They're amazing in this movie. Most of the kills are practical effects. There are some that are enhanced with CGI. I'm not a fan of that most of the time, but I think here looks pretty good. There's one kill in particular that logically, physically, with physics I'm talking here, science, the shit couldn't happen the way it happened. It involves a dumpster. But everything else in the film, kill-wise, are super creative. I love that. I don't know how much of that is from that original trailer, fake trailer, whatever, from the Grindhouse movie, but most of it seems like creative stuff that most people I talk to had not seen before, so I'm assuming most of them were new ideas. Some of them are brutal, one involving those little plastic things you stick in the side of corn on the cob. Who uses that? You have fingers. You don't need to buy plastic from the store that has metal rods in it to put in corn on the cob. Who does that? Anyway, this movie utilizes so much for the kills, and I loved it. To mix that with such really good performances, including Patrick Dempsey, who I don't even know that much of, but I know the name. He's in this. He's the only recognizable actor to me that I knew of, aside from one of my favorite comedians from Joe Rogan, Tim Dillon. I love Tim Dillon. He's in this. He is hilarious, dude. I love him. He's such an asshole, but he's great. He was a security guard at that store that had the whole crazy Black Friday stuff. If you know Tim Dillon, if you don't know Tim Dillon, if you only know him by this movie, go check out some of his comedy stuff. The dude is hilarious, man. It's great. I really love it. It has this 80s slasher throwback in a very whodunit mystery thriller way, without any kind of supernatural elements, and thank God with no political bullshit. I could not tell you how relieving that was to know that they didn't do any of that shit like most Hollywood films would have done nowadays. It has this indie flair to it, and again, despite it having this 80s throwback feel, it doesn't have like new retro wave music or anything. It just kind of has a feeling, like a familiar feeling for people like myself who are born in the 90s, who grew up on 80s horror films and slashers. This feels like my kind of thing. It feels familiar. It shows that kind of thing that Quentin Tarantino and Eli Roth have in common, of this pulpy, old style that they love from their childhood or teenhood or whatever, that they utilize now to make their movies so damn good. Thanksgiving has all of that. It is an absolute blast. I recommend it highly. I recommend it highly. It has so many memorable things about it. It's probably one of the most memorable, if not one of the best horror films made, and again, probably the last 10, 15 years. I think it kicks ass. It's so engaging and fun. Whether it be a standalone, which I think it would do better as, or if it became a series, it would have so much more in common with like the Scream franchise, and I don't want that. So I kind of hope that Eli Roth will keep this by itself as a standalone. I'm sure it made a shit ton of money. I'm sure it did, because everyone was talking about this. I loved it. I truly loved it, and again, I think personally it's probably my favorite horror film that came out last year. I loved things like Knock at the Cabin. I loved things like Infinity Pool, my second favorite of the year. But there wasn't much that came out last year that I liked. Exclusives, originals, whatever, Netflix, Shudder, all of that. This was one of the ones that blew me away, even though I saw it this year in 2024. I loved it. If you've not seen Thanksgiving, everything about it is great. The gore, the practical effects, even when they're mixed with some CGI, sometimes they look great. All of it's great. It's shot well, the directing is working great, the camera work is good, all of it. Everything that could be good is really good in here. And again, to have something even shocking, like not much for character moments in the film, but having the actors be able to still be relatable and lovable, again, that familiar nature of the older slashers that I grew up on is here. It's here in spirit. Like the Holy Spirit, but not so much. It's murderous. I loved it. It's great. I think Thanksgiving is such a big recommendation for me. If you've not seen it, take my advice, watch it. Watch it as soon as you can. I think you'll love it. I'm going to buy a copy for my collection because I loved it so much. I recommend it highly if you haven't seen Thanksgiving, as I've said. And if I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, hands down, no questions asked, 5 out of 5 stars. Without question. I loved this shit. It's so good. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it based on my recommendation. Put your thoughts and comments down below. I want to hear everything you have to say about it. And the Thanksgiving theme was not wasted. Not a theme song, but like the theme, the setting of this time of year was not wasted. And I love that about it. It was so good. Again, I wish it had been made 5 years prior, 6 years prior, when Black Friday was a bigger deal. Because 2023's Black Friday was the most upsetting, pathetic shit I've ever seen in my life. There were like no deals this year. Black Friday is like a 3 or 4 week long thing now. There is no real Black Friday anymore, and I feel like this year was the total last nail in the coffin for it. But still, it's a shame, man. Anyway, what did you think about Thanksgiving? Put your thoughts and comments down below about the movie and my review down below, please. I'd love to hear everything you have to say. And thank you all for watching, guys. I kind of ran out of time. It is Valentine's Day, so I ran into some errands today, and I went to see my mom a little bit before I went to work. Now I have to go to work, so I didn't have a whole lot of time for recording today is what I'm trying to tell you. Anyway, thank you for being here. God bless you all. Have a great Valentine's Day, and goodbye.